Rennsport have massive plans, not just for their new racing sim, but for sim racing as a whole. I got to try it out at the weekend, talk to the team and get to the bottom of that whole NFT business. But we'll get to that. Rennsport aren't messing about. The plans for their sim read like a particularly imaginative child's Christmas list. First and foremost, it hopes to be a massive esport platform, elevating competitive sim racing to the heights of MOBA and FPS events, and their partnership with ESL certainly helps that along the way. But most of you don't really care about esports, so I'm going to gloss over all of that for now. And the plans for the sim itself encompass wide-ranging content across many racing disciplines, both new and historic. Sprint, endurance and point-to-point racing were all either mentioned or demonstrated, and taking a look in the menus, various single-player, career mode and online challenges supplemented the usual competitive online malarkey that you'd expect. Then there's all the sim racer must-haves. VR, triple screen support and modding are all either planned or in progress. There's driver rankings, safety rating and an online competition pyramid strata thing, though there were no details presented about how any of that will work in practice. And that's a statement that's fairly accurate for most of what I've just said, thanks to the limited build of the game that we all got to try at the Munich Summit Event. But from what I've seen so far, I wouldn't bet against these guys. Before we get onto my impressions of the driving, there is that whole NFT business. CEO Maurice Haye exclaimed, "It's not a fucking NFT game," and then proceeded to describe a model that assigns the assets within the game with unique identifiers that can be bought and sold. So for example, the winning car of say the N24 eSport event could sell their actual race winning car with its actual history, or modders could create assets for sale on the platform legally. Whatever that entails. And chatting to others at the event, it seems that was a fairly common conclusion. But it does seem that these digital assets aren't technically NFTs, and there was no suggestion at all that this will be handled on a blockchain. So despite the slim technical differences, I actually don't really see the issue, and for me at least, the ethical issues surrounding NFTs probably don't apply here. My point is, we're used to paying for digital assets individually in the likes of Race Room and iRacing, where you pay for a license to use the content on their platform. But with individualized asset ownership, we as the users would appear to have the option to sell those assets that we own, should we choose. While this perhaps isn't overly exciting for some, it does give third-party creators the ability to generate revenue with the content that they create for the game. And if you think about it, publishers of titles that allow modding often end up benefiting massively financially from community-generated content, while the creators themselves rarely see any compensation for their efforts. And modding does appear to be very important to the team, and that's perhaps unsurprising given the CEO was formerly head of Morphicon, the publisher of the Arma titles in various territories. Now, with all of this, the devil is going to be in the detail, which at this very early stage is a little thin on the ground, so let's wait and see how things develop, I guess. Speaking of development, the aim is to have the full release version available to the public by the end of 2023, which does give them a healthy time budget given the already advanced state of things today, which I guess brings us to sum things up in a sentence, Rennsport feels very impressive for a title that's perhaps 18 months away from the final release. A lot of the basics are there and doing what they should, but unsurprisingly content is thin on the ground at the moment and there's plenty of rough edges that need attention. The two GT3 cars provided for the summit did feel like GT3s and GT3s in a proper sim. The basics of the physics felt pretty convincing and you could drive the cars in the same way you would expect in one of the established sims. Weight transfer was immediately apparent and it differed between the BMW and Porsche in a convincing way. And then there was the Porsche Mission R, which was an entirely different beast thanks to the truckload of lithium that it's concealing. And all three cars felt like they existed and interacted with the physical space in a pretty believable manner. At this stage, the tyre model, in my opinion at least, does need some work. All three cars felt like they just lacked a bit of grip compared to my expectations, which is admittedly set by other sims and watching those cars extensively in real life. The GT3s in particular felt quite edgy on the limit and slid around a lot more than I was expecting. But, and this is important, those slides were predictable, repeatable, and importantly, they were savable. So actually, while I don't think the specifics are quite properly dialed in yet, the overall impression was actually a solid base to work from. And the same is true with the force feedback. On the VRS rigs in the arena, this did feel a bit spiky for my taste, but on the creator rigs that have been provided by Fanatec, more detail was present and the overall feel was much less aggressive. And I put that down to likely differences in the settings, by the way, and not the hardware. The feedback was communicative about the driving basics, grip level, weight transfer and road surface, though not as refined as I would like, and the team did acknowledge that there was still plenty of work left to be done on the force feedback. That being said, it did feel well in advance of any so-called simcade title, as much as I hate that term, and it was pretty drivable in this early state. And a good example of this was the feeling of changing grip levels as you drive over things like curbs, which I will come back to in a moment. There were a few oddities to note. The cars we ran had no access to setup changes, which is understandable, and we're told that a full suite of setup options will be available further down the line. But that did mean that playing with basics like ABS and traction control were off the cards. And the latter did feel very heavy-handed, and even when it was heavily intervening, it didn't always seem to stop the rears from spinning up, and there were some odd rev drops present as well. To be honest, this was one of the few aspects of the sim that really did feel like it was in the alpha stage of development. The other would be behaviour on curbs, and to be frank, these are pretty lethal at this stage, and there were more than a few space oddity moments to be had. Sausage curbs are a violent and uplifting affair, while entry curbs do like to pull you off circuit with significant force. But again, this is an early alpha, and I would expect those issues to be ironed out before too long. As for the rest of the circuit mesh, all seemed pretty decent on the version of Hockenheim with its FIA Grade 1 tarmac. Goodwood was a much bumpier affair, and a couple of the bumps were pretty aggressive, to be honest. I don't know at this stage if these are from laser scans or not, which is a question I'll need to ask in the coming weeks, but whatever the case, the circuits have been created with plenty of attention to detail and a careful eye. They really do have a sense of vibe and of actually being a living, breathing venue, something that's so often missing in racing sims. And that's complemented by the graphics, which I really don't need to tell you are absolutely stunning. What I may need to mention is the sound design, which does feel a little on the basic side at the moment. So, on the driving front, all is looking promising. Rennsport have developed what feels like a solid base to work from, and nothing jumps out as fundamentally problematic. In fact, I'd say the vast majority of drivers that I spoke to over the weekend were really impressed by how refined it is to drive at this stage, and I certainly count myself in that category as well. And as with the digital asset situation, I'm really keen to see how things progress over the coming months, because, as we know, it's the small details that make or break a sim. Make no mistake, Rennsport is a big play. The team seemingly want to create a sim that touches all bases, and they're starting from scratch with a completely new physics system that integrates with Unreal 5. If ACC is anything to go by, we know that is no trivial task. And then there's the development of the digital sales platform and modding tools to aid in the creation of community assets, a massive esport focus, full weather and dynamic track simulation, and a whole host of other things we've not yet seen. To put it bluntly, that's a lot. But with the beginnings of a solid sim in there already and a decent time frame before launch, it all feels very plausible. So I guess much will rest on the business model, and that's where we're quite light on details. The possibility of Rennsport being a subscription-based model was mooted but not confirmed, and there was some suggestion of a free-to-play version as well. And of course then there's the content sales model, which isn't all that well defined either. What I can tell you is they have big plans for the esports side of the title, which may not be that interesting to the casual racer, but it may have an outsized impact. The partnership with ESL is big news, and it promises to put racing sims in front of a wider variety of gamers than we've previously seen. While other sims caught new customers from real-world motorsport tie-ins, Rennsport are seemingly looking to engage the broader gaming audience in a way that we've just not seen before, and on a scale that was completely incomprehensible a few years ago. What impact will that have? Will it pay off? Have I completely misunderstood their intentions? Well, I guess we'll find out.